On April the 20th last year at 5 p.m, a 17-year-old boy checked into a hotel in central Sydney. He was carrying his older brother's passport as ID. At 11 p.m, he walked to a nearby grocery store to buy food. It would be his last recorded outing. The next morning, shortly after 6 a.m, the alarm was raised. The young man had jumped off the roof and was lying dead in the car park. In Australia, on average, suicide happens 5 times a day. A statistic to most, but not to loved ones of those who die. Up in the hotel room, a handwritten note was found.
Please do not assume you know why I did this. Even I am not completely sure. It is simply the best thing to do. The mechanism telling me not to kill myself is broken.
The letter was left in the middle of the bed. I mean, he hadn't slept in the bed, but it was just there, in the middle with the pen. Please take note. That was my sense of it. Just quietly there.
The note was a tragic attempt by the teenager to explain his actions and to console his family.
Try to think of what I'm doing as just finishing early. By far the hardest thing about this is the impact it will have on you. It fills me with grief when I think what I've done to you.
But did he have any real idea of the grief he would cause? Tonight, family and friends reveal the terrible impact of this young man's secret decision to kill himself, as they break the deathly wall of silence surrounding suicides.
Despite my problems, I enjoyed my life. I liked my house and family, going to school, learning, my friends, and everything in between. I especially like who I am and the way I work. Me and my future both. I wanted to do everything and learn everything. I wanted to influence our morals, our politics, our science, and our societies.
What was he like as a small kid?
He was very small and very thin.
Like all kids, quite happy. I mean, not necessarily different as such. I'm just a very happy kid.
Campbell Bolton was born to high-achieving middle-class parents who held great hopes for his future. His mother, Meredy O'Donnell, is a family therapist. His father, Derek Bolton, a computer software engineer. Their older son, Angus, has now completed a postgraduate degree. And Campbell, the younger son, inherited the family's strong intellectual curiosity.
I think a lot of children sort of surprise adults from time to time with the things they come out with. But he was no exception to that. He would come out with questions. You think, good heavens, you know, a child so young asking something like that.
Campbell grew up in a reserved, cerebral family.
We didn't call them Mum and Dad, we called them Meredy and Derek. And a lot of people find that strange. But it's not a distancing thing, it's just something we do. We find corniness abhorrent, that sort of thing, you know.
But what about being affectionate to them?
Well, we don't... See, it's funny, I've started to hug Derek more lately. And I feel like he doesn't kind of know what to do. Because we kind of don't do it. We don't hug, we don't kiss and that kind of thing. And we're a quite distant family. That doesn't mean we're cold, we're not clinging to each other.
We don't hug, we don't kiss, we're quite a distant family. Do you think that that's significant in any way?
There would be hundreds of families that you could apply that kind of description to, where the end point is not suicide of one of the members. I really can't find anything in the family that makes me sit up and think, this is the issue that was leading down that pathway. I just can't see it. What we did with this was to...
Campbell's family history displays none of the usual factors blamed for youth suicides. no history of violence or abuse, no psychiatric illness or instability, no divorce, no drug or alcohol abuse. Professor Graham Martin, one of Australia's top suicide prevention specialists, spoke with Campbell's mother at length and studied the suicide note before being interviewed for this program. He believes the case shows similarities with other personal histories he studied.
They think this through, they make the arrangements, they do the planning, they never let on to friends or family, and they're not strictly depressed or irrational or psychotic or anything else. They've made a life decision and they're going through with that life decision.
Campbell's willingness to make his own decisions was apparent early on. He was self-contained and independent.
Campbell was not a kid who we worried about. He went off to daycare, he went off to school. I remember when I dropped him at school, Meredy, don't worry, I'm fine. You know, this is what this 5-year-old says to me. You know, I'm looking tearful, and Campbell says, I'm fine.
From primary school right through to year 12, Campbell Bolton attended a highly respected private school in Sydney. He soon made his mark. Quirky, loyal to his friends, and a born mediator.
He wasn't your average jock at all. He was very different, and that's what drew people to him, because he was so interesting.
He was loyal in the sense that he stayed with some of his better friends for years, you know, on a decade, which is an impressive feat considering all the change and, you know, that you go through as a young child and as teenagers.
Yeah, he had a great sense of justice. Sometimes infuriating, because sometimes what you saw as a sense of justice wasn't. But he was sort of one of those kids, always a mediator.
Academically, Campbell was outstanding. He excelled in English, history, maths and science. For 4 years running, he was dux of his year. But it was something he never bragged about.
He was somebody who was very disarming, very, very quiet. He would just indicate by the flicker of an eye, just a little thing at the corner of his mouth, indicating that he'd understood. He was one of those delightful students that the joy of learning was the learning itself.
He was very, very gifted at, when he turned his mind to something, he could master it, and he would take it beyond where other students would go.
Come speech night, when he's basically falling over with prizes, he just, he was incredibly shy about it and quite embarrassed, but it was definitely effortless. And where you'd see him put effort would be when you'd get 100%. We'd see he'd put a moderate amount of effort, it'd be a good 80, 90%. So it was just, infuriating.
In this short film made in Year 9 by fellow students Jade Abbott and Hilary Larkos, Campbell's status within the school as an academic high flyer was celebrated. He played the fictional role of an arrogant student, Chester Burnham, who thinks he's got it made.
Jade and I were thinking, well, who's going to be the star of the film? And we just thought Campbell, because he's kind of got that dorky look about him, but he's still really kind of fun, and we knew that he'd get into it and do a good job.
What could he have achieved if he'd chosen to live?
Oh, anything you want. He was just a very capable, extraordinarily capable person with an extremely good brain.
But Campbell was a boy who used his intellect to deal with his emotions. Some suicides involve readily detectable mental illness, but it can be harder to identify youngsters who are privately and intellectually attracted to the idea of suicide. Suicidal ideation, as it's known clinically, can be extremely dangerous and difficult